What's up, guys, and welcome back to the infamous project. Beautiful sunny day here in Texas. Temperature is just right. Beautiful breeze passing through the shop. And what better environment than to do some fox body stuff. So you can see behind me the twin turbo notch, the Coyote swapped twin turbo notch is back. Back from full custom exhaust, which you guys are gonna want to see this because it truly is a work of art. And it is back from a final few little paint touch-ups. There was a few little areas and spots that just kind of weren't 100% perfect, so I got Red Dog to touch those up. So we're gonna go over those few things. But before we can turn this car over to the owner, there's just a few last little button-up items to do. And one of those things is to change the tune. So the car got tuned in E85, and the tune was tricky because the downpipes, there was no exhaust on it. The O2 sensors were sitting like within 6 inches from open air, and the tuner was a little concerned that some oxygen was coming back and messing more specifically with the drivability side of things, which I've noticed. This thing is pouring fuel out, especially around idle or like lower RPMs, and the car is just trying to catch itself sometimes. So I reached out to the owner and I said, listen, man, you want to keep this thing in E85 because now is the opportunity to change it to pump gas. And he said, go ahead and switch it over to pump gas. So we've got a tune and we're going to get that loaded on via HP tuners. And the second thing that we need to do is actually wire up a emulator for the Volvo electric power steering pump. Now, a lot of you guys have asked me about this, and it is running, in fact, both the Hydro Boost and the power steering. So that's right, that Volvo power steering pump is actually running the brakes and running the steering. So the one thing about that, and a gentleman reached out to me who'd seen the video and he said, well, how does it work? I'm like, it actually doesn't work that bad at all. Just sometimes when the RPMs dip down a little too far due to that tune, a little bit too much draw on the pump, and it kicks the 80 amp breaker. So he actually was the one who put me onto this thing. I'm going to show you guys this little emulator because guess what? These things, like a lot of newer vehicles, are pulse modulated, driven through the ECM, PCM, whatever you want to call it. And when that doesn't get the signal from the computer, it's actually running in limp mode. So this little device is actually there to trick the pump to thinking that it's plugged into the computer properly, and you get your own little dial which can actually control the amount of flow and volume that that pump is pushing through. So I'm hoping that that's going to rectify any of those last little issues combined with the tune. But anyways, let's play musical cars now. Need to get that car in the lift so we can show you the exhaust and move Jerry's car, which unfortunately Jerry hasn't been around and we haven't really been able to make much headway with it. We got the Hydro Boost all bled out and everything else, but need to get the brakes bled and finish the shifter linkage to be able to put it in a gear and drive it out. That's what I wish I could do, but unfortunately I am going to be pushing it. So anyways, let's fire up that beast. We'll move it out and around, then we'll move this and then get the turbo car. Alright guys, got the car up a little bit and I've got the fuel line disconnected off the fuel filter there and going into this jug. So now we'll just hit the key forward, as this tune actually just runs the pump as long as the key's forward. Which actually was a complaint of mine, because I kind of like it when the pump just primes then shuts off. But in this case, it's actually beneficial because it allows us to drain that tank out. So this is a Cobra tank with a 4 fuel system. For those that might be new to the car and the channel, it's got a complete fuel pump controller in the trunk here. So I'm hoping we don't have a full tank in this thing, because I'm going to need more jugs if that's the case. So thankfully there actually wasn't too much fuel left in there. It was actually pretty damn low, to be honest. So I have added probably half a gallon of 93, and I'm just going to cycle that through. So that way, just kind of get whatever residual that might be hanging out at the bottom of the tank there. All right, so now I'm gonna fire up the car with whatever's left. Safe to say there's no fuel left in the system. So go ahead now, hook our fuel filter back up and get this all sorted out. All right, so a few things before we get the tune loaded up here is the first thing was I found this bolt in my fuel tank vent line, which of course it's just sort of venting back here, but they must have done that to avoid the welding and the fuel vapors and for safety, but I'm glad that I noticed it, because the last thing that you want is a non-vented gas tank. Secondly, I noticed that they moved the fuel filter out of the way and they zip tied things, but the lines are running like under the exhaust, so I think I might need to take this section out so that I can get this above this pipe, because I don't think there's any other way that I can do it since it's all welded up straight. So I'm going to take this clamp off, that clamp off, see if I can get this section out, and then fish the fuel lines over. Got the fuel filter mounted, got some riv nuts put into the frame, everything's bolted down and tight, and rerouted the fuel line to go up and over this way instead of trying to go up and around really close to the exhaust over on this side. And because this is a Cobra tank, the fittings are actually in the center of the tank here and not way over on this side. So kind of allowed me to snake the lines up and around like this. Everything should be fine. We do have a pinion snubber, so we don't have to worry about the diff possibly going up there and hitting something. So that is all good. Now, moving to the front of the car, I managed to get this connector off the Volvo pump, and there it is, guys. Now, a lot of you have asked about this, and either I didn't put the video out or I didn't do a very good job explaining, but this is the style that has the remote reservoir. So normally this guy right here would go up to a separate reservoir tank, but in this case this is actually going to the fancy reservoir for coolant overflow and all that other stuff in the fender well. So this bracket I've welded onto the frame right here. I bolted it on over here to a little arm you can see coming down off, similar to the one that holds the fender on there. So that is how the pump and the bracket is mounted, and it is very secure, especially with that bracket on this side being welded. And here is the connector we're going to be working with. So you can see 2 wires were cut, and one had this red wire on, which this is the one that is coming from that delayed relay. So that delayed relay gives this guy juice about 20 seconds once the ignition is on. So that gives you enough time to start the car, let things warm up a little bit before the draw of the pump is going to kick on. So these 2 wires here are apparently pretty critical, because you can see this connector is using all 3, and then it's going into this little emulator box, as mentioned before, to kind of trick the pump into thinking that it's controlled by the PCM, the Volvo PCM that doesn't exist. And then here is the little potentiometer dial that'll allow us to crank it up or turn it down. So I'm excited to see how this is all going to work. This should be pretty straightforward. I'm going to reach up in there and connect this back onto the connector in the pump, and guys, it's buried on the back side, so it was actually very challenging to get my hand up in there to even get this thing off, but I did. So I'm going to clip this guy on. We're going to wire this up. I'll share with you guys what wires need to be connected and how. And then the last thing that we're going to need is the tune to get loaded so that we can fire this thing now on pump gas. So stick around. Before I get too carried away, the wiring here is pretty much done, and you're really only connecting 2 wires. It's 4, but it's really only 2. And the reason for that is this is the harness that we connected onto the power steering pump itself. So those are the 3 wires going into a little module here, okay? And then we had to connect the 2 wires for the potentiometer, little controller here, yellow and gray. So it's our wide open versus not so wide open. So I'm actually going to leave that cranked. I want this thing full speed. So the 2 wires that you really are left with connecting are 12-volt ignition, right? Which again, this one's actually coming off one of these 2 relays. One's for the fans, one's for the pump, and this is the style of timer relay right here. Bueller time delay relay, and you can see there's a little potentiometer in there, and you just get a tiny little flathead screwdriver and you delay or crank that knob, and it's anywhere from 1 second to 1 minute, right? 12 volt, 30 amp, and pretty straightforward. I'll put a link in the description if I remember, and it tells you, what is supposed to be connected to. So nice little units for sure. So now all I need to do is connect the ground. I'll finish cleaning up my wiring here with some loom and everything else. And I don't know where this is going to live. For now, it's going to live somewhere around here. I had both relays kind of here, so that way they're accessible and you can adjust them as need be. And I'll probably do the same with this guy, at least for now, while testing and everything else is getting done, so that we know everything is working the way that it should. Which I get it.
It won't let me. I have to get Ford credits, so he didn't unlock it.
Oh. How much is 4 credits?
It's like $100, I think.
Okay. What a dick.
Yeah.
So I finally got set up with Palm Beach. The tune that I got for that twin turbo car, originally the E85, I wasn't happy with. Then they swapped it over to pump gas. I still wasn't happy with it, and just kind of the communication could have been better. And I'm not going to knock the tuner or anything like that. It's just like, I'm trying to run a business. Like, I need things to be moving quicker and not just be waiting around all the time on other people when I don't have to be. All right, guys, new day, and got the MPVI 3, and we have a new tune from Palm Beach Dyno. So gonna get that loaded up on here and gonna see how it does. There we go. So we got about 4 minutes. I'm gonna put this down, go do some other stuff, and I'm gonna come back. Oh, all right, guys. So now we get to hook the device up into our laptop. Alright, so our tune is loaded, and after it got loaded up, the fuel pump wasn't coming on. So I guess when he configured things, he didn't realize we were triggering the fuel pump controller individually. So here we go. We got our BCM scanner up. These are all the channels. So this is an XML file that they sent over, right? So those are all the parameters that they're going to be looking for. And what they want now is a 5-minute idle log of the car. So all we got to do is start it up, and you can see there's USB now connected to the MPVI 3. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn our ignition forward. You can hear the fuel pump. Okay. So let's connect. There we go. Yeah, I cannot get this thing to run, guys, so I'm gonna send that over and hopefully he can figure it out, because I give it throttle and it does not want to do anything. All right, next tune is loading, and hopefully we can try starting this car up again once that is complete. Okay, complete. So, plug this in, load up our screen. Okay, we are connected. Let's record. Starts and stalls. So it is Friday afternoon here. In fact, it's Good Friday, so Easter weekend. And I've got my third revision of a tune uploading onto the PCM right now. So fingers crossed, because we are running out. There might be enough time to go back and forth with them one more time, but this might be the last one. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, we can get this thing to start, idle, and do some data logging. So the tune actually just finished. You can see here it is complete. There we go. So time to plug things in, connect the fuel pump, try and start the car. Disconnect, connect. Well, it's a little bit better, but not enough. Alright guys, so I'm sure you can get now a little bit of a sense on what it's like to remotely tune your car. That is now 3 tunes, and the car isn't even idling on its own at the moment. Now Palm Beach, they start their tunes from scratch, and I can definitely see why they would potentially do that. That's just because even if you had a working tune, which the car did, you know, we were running, driving, idling somewhat beforehand, but the problem is you don't know where your benchmarks are, or you do, and like there's just too many things to look for. So by starting from scratch, you can build things and you know what you're doing, and you're not trying to fix or deal with somebody else's modifications. Sound familiar when you buy a so-called built and done car? But that's just sort of the reality of things. So today we've already done 3 tunes. We're not idling yet, and I'm not going to go through on this video and just, you know what I mean, show you guys every single revision. However, I will have an update in the next video. Hopefully we're going to be idling and in a position to start driving around and doing some data logging there, so that way you guys can see a little bit more of the process. So hopefully you're enjoying a little bit of this video, and until next time, we'll see you back here on the Infamous Project.